ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning session. We shall continue on the journey of Mundaka Upanishad. We covered up to mantra 3 of first Mundak chapter 2. Now in that we saw that when you put ahuti in the fire, and as we say in Hindi, lap lapati, agni jo hai na, if you put in that kind of fire, then it reaches the destination of the divine power you intend to pray for. For example, you are praying for Indra and you put ahuti in the agni, you do the havan, and when the lapte, the fire is at its peak, and that time you put ahuti in the middle of it, it is taken to the divine power. Now this has raised many questions. A lot of modern people believe that this is all, what we call superstition. It has nothing to do with the reality. But it is not so. I'll give you a few examples of modern world, and then you will realize that it actually is true. It doesn't happen. It is not a miracle. It actually can happen. Now let us, because this question arose in my own mind, that it should be clarified. Why? Because a lot of questions have been raised on this kind of prakriya of havan, the process of havan. But it has a very scientific basis. Now let us take a few examples to understand it. First of all, the entire cosmology, the astrology, the astronomical, objects in the universe, they are closely related to our lives on the earth. For example, look at the example of the sun. Now, sun is what? 15 crore years, 15 crore kilometers away, 15 crore kilometers away from the earth. It's a vast distance. But it rises, we also rise. The sun sets, we also prepare to sleep. It runs the water cycle on the earth from such a distance. The water converts into water vapor, goes up, then it becomes clouds, and then again condensation process and brings it back in the form snow and rain and things like that. Hails. Look at the fertility of the earth. The fertility of the earth comes from the sun rays. The sun rays are absorbed by the earth, and then it becomes fertile. In areas which are in Arctic and Antarctic, where sun rays don't reach in adequate quantity, there's no fertility at all. So I'm just giving you a few examples. There are many, many things which are regulated by the sun, sitting 15 crore kilometers away from the earth, regulating all those things on the earth through its rays. The sun rays regulate all this such a far away distance. Similarly, the moon is about 4 lakh kilometers away. And we know this Jwar Bhata, which happens, you have this high and low tides in the sea. They all happen because of the moon. This is all scientifically proved. The moon is 4 lakh kilometers away from the earth. It causes that. And another scientific discovery tells us that the menstrual cycle in women is regulated by the moon. So you see the astronomical powers, the planets in the solar system, they have direct impact on our lives from such a distance through their rays, simply through their rays. There's nothing else. Sun rays and moon rays, they impact us and we are controlled by them. So the rays can control from such a vast distance. This is one example I'm giving you. So why not the rage arising from the fire, the ahuti, which is burnt into fire and becomes like rage? Why can't it reach the destination it is intended to? The second example is our mind. Our mind can travel very fast and travel to anything we want. Now, if you want to travel, for example, to the image of your grandfather, in a fraction of a second, you can go there. And then you can surrender to him, you can talk to him in your mind. And perhaps he is listening to you. If you are doing things with total attention, with total meditation, the message will reach him. This is the power of mind. So in this Havan, we use mind because the mantra which are recited, it is directing our mind to that particular divinity. And then we are putting ahuti in the fire, which gets converted into the sun rays, and those rays reach the divinity. Now let me give you one more example of modern world. Say we go back in time about 100 years back in time of my grandfather, for example. Nobody could imagine that I can speak here and you can listen to me sitting in Canada. It was impossible to believe. If somebody had told that time something like this, he will say you are a absolutely, fool. You don't understand what can happen. But today it is happening. You can say that, okay, some cables are there which carry this sound and this, image and any document from one place to another. But there is also Wi-Fi which is without cables. So in certain areas, there is Wi-Fi, in certain areas, there are cables and they carry it. And the further invention will come in such a way that there would be no need of a cable. You will have Wi-Fi everywhere. And your my sound will be carried anywhere in the world. You simply need to have an instrument to receive it. Like radio waves. We receive radio without any cable anywhere. We simply have a receiving station with us, and somebody talks in New York or in London or in Washington, and we receive it in my home, in front of me, with that small receiver. So the sound can travel, the image can travel, everything can, the documents can travel. So why not the ahuti? Ahuti can also travel in the form of sun rays and reach the divinity. Like, for example, another example, the electricity. It is produced in Bhakranangal and comes to Jaipur, for example, all the way from there. You say, okay, there are cables carrying it. You can say that. But a time will come where cables will not be required at all. And you can bring it. How you bring the electricity all the way from there to here? So there are certain natural ways in which this kind of ahuti, this kind of surrender to a divine power is done through Havan, and the rays of the sun carry it to the divinity, because the fire which consumes the ahuti gets converted into the sun rays and carry that ahuti all the way to the divine power. So this is the science behind the Havan and the whole process of karma kand in our Vedic writings. So this is what I thought I will explain before we move further. Now let us go to the verse number 4. We had done up to 3 last time. Now we'll go to verse number 4. No, actually verse number 3. We have done only up to 2. So we'll do the verse number 3 now. Yasya agnihotram adarsham apaurmasam achaturmasya atithi varjitam. Now there are some additional qualities which have been mentioned in this mantra of the person who is doing Havan. The person who is doing Havan has been called Agnihotram. That he is the one who is using Agni for transmitting his message, his, dravya to the supreme divine power. So here he says that those people who do not perform the prescribed rituals on Adarsham means on the night of Amavasya. A Purnmasam means the night of Purnima, that is full moon day and new moon day. On full moon day and new moon day, we are supposed to do certain rituals, particularly those people who are performing Agni, who are working as an Agnihotra and transmitting their, ahuti to the gods. They are supposed to do certain procedures, certain rituals on those days, and if they are not doing it, then they are not performing it properly. It is something which is deficiency. Similarly, Achaturmasham, that in the 4 months of the rainy season, they are also supposed to observe certain restrictions, and if they are not observing those restrictions, then they are also deficient in that process. Then Atithi Varjitam. Now, Atithi Varjitam means that those who are not extending proper welcome to the Atithis, they are also deficient. So, Adarsham, Apaurmasam, Achaturmasham, Ajirthi Varjitam. Now, Atithi here, the Atithi is sometimes misunderstood. In our, normal sense, anybody coming to our home, we call him Atithi, whether my friend comes or my relative comes. But in the strict Vedic sense, Atithi is the person who is in search of spiritual knowledge, who have resigned from the world, and who is living, a solitary life in search of the supreme knowledge. So it is basically the saints and sadhus who live on their own a solitary life. If they come to your home and if you do not look after them properly, then it is not a correct thing. Then you are deficient in your process of Agnihotra. So Atithi is specifically meant for that in terms of Vedic language. In terms of our normal usage, we use everybody as Atithi. Atithi Devo Bhava, it has been actually misused greatly. Atithi is basically that person who is dedicated his life for search of spiritual knowledge, for search of his true self, and who is living a solitary life away from the world. So that is the meaning of Atithi in that sense. And then there are 1 or 2 other things here. That these are also the supplementary requirements which should be performed by a true Agnihotra as per the Vedic rituals. And if you do not do all this, then what happens? Then there is a very strong wording which has been used, that आज सप्तमानो लोकान हिन्नस्ति, that उसके 7 लोक खत्म हो जाएंगे, that 7 lokas will be destroyed. Now this 7 lokas, we should understand, it is not as what you
Jai
call
Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna. It is not as frightening as we think it is. So what are these 7 lokas? The 7 lokas are our 7, PDs, 7 generations. 3 generations before us and 3 generations after us. We are in the middle. So the generation of father, grandfather, and great grandfather. And on the other side, the generation of son, grandson, and great grandson. And then you are in the middle, the 7th generation. So normally the science also tells us that our genes and sanskar, they pass normally to the third, up to the 3 generations. That is son, grandson, and great grandson. And we inherit the sanskar from the 3 older generations. So here it basically means that if you are not performing Havan properly and not observing these restrictions and rituals which are prescribed for Amavasya, Purnima, the 4 months of the rainy season, and proper, respect for the Atithis, in that situation, you will not be able to transmit your good sanskaras to the next 3 generations, and the previous 3 generations will not be able to bless you properly. That is the meaning which, the learned people have come out of this particular mantra, the second part of the mantra. That it is not frightening that your 7 lokas will be destroyed. No, it is basically the blessings of the previous 3 generations will not pass on to you, and you will not be able to pass on the good sanskaras to the next 3 generations if you do not perform Havan as per the Vedic prescriptions, in which the first part was explained in mantra 2, the second part is explained in mantra 3. So we have covered now up to mantra 3. And here, once again, I would like to emphasize the importance of Amavasya and Purnima and Chaturmas. As we discussed, the astronomical combinations, the astronomical alignments, they impact our life. And therefore, the calendar which we follow, the Vikram Samvat calendar, in which Amavasya and Purnima are considered very special days. And that is why they have prescribed certain rituals for those 2 days. Many people observe fasting on those days. Many people, eat less during the 4 months of monsoon, because that is not very healthy for the body. So you have to observe certain restrictions. The Jain Munis, they observe many restrictions during the 4 months of, monsoon. Chomasa, they call it Chomasa. So these are all correlated with the cosmological facts which our ancestors had discovered in those days. And this was properly understood by the generation that time. But today, sometimes we feel, and some of our colleagues feel, that this is not scientific, this is superstition, but it is not so. And that is why I thought I would emphasize on these examples which properly explain that this is not superstition, this is possible if we have that kind of purity of mind, purity of intention, and purity of procedure. Now, in the verse number, in the mantra 4, they have described 7 variety of fire. This is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, they also mentioned uh, 49 types of air, Vayu Devata, Gunchas Vayu Devata. Lord Krishna has mentioned that. And here it is mentioning 7 types of fire. This is a very scientific analysis of fire. The fire is not one, simple element. It has many gradients. So those gradients have been mentioned here. So those are Kali, Karali, Manojava, Sulohita, Sudrum Varna, Sfulingali, Viswaruchi Devi, and Lelaimana. Now, Lelaimana is the one which is referred to when we are referring to the putting of ahuti in the fire. Lelaimana is the, laplapati hui. It's all with practically no smoke. And it is the pinnacle of the fire. So these are the 7, they call them 7 jivya, 7 tongues of fire. So this is a scientific analysis of fire, element of fire, that it has 7 varieties. Those are Kali, Karali, Manojava, Sulohita, Sudrum Varna, Sfulingani, Viswaruchi Devi, and Lelaimana. So these are the variations of the fire which have been explained. This is absolutely nothing but a scientific explanation of fire. Since there is a reference to the variety of fires in mantra number 2. And then we come to mantra number 5. Now, this mantra tells us that if you follow these procedures, which are mentioned in mantra 2 and 3, if you follow that procedure properly, that Agnihotri followed that procedure, then that, material which you use as ahuti, it actually reaches the destination through the rays of the sun. So how it says, Etesu brajmanesu yatha kalam charte tam hi adaidan eta ayut suryasya rasmaya nayanti, suryasya rasmayan, that is surya ki kiran, nayanti, nayanti means to carry there, yatra, the destination, devanam, the divine power which was intended in the Havan, and Adhivas, wherever he is resident in this universe. So it says that anybody, any Agnihotri, who follows this ritual, which is mentioned in Karm Kand of the Vedas, and it also said in the first mantra that those mantras were seen by the sages, rishis. It was not a mental exercise. It was not pro and con arguments in the mind of a philosopher. But these mantras were seen during the meditation. And those mantras were written by those sages in the Vedas. And following those mantras, mantra number 2 and mantra number 3, where how we perform the Havan. And there are, finer details in the Vedas. When a Pandit comes to a particular place to perform Havan, then he has, more details, because the Upanishad only gives short reference to those Vedic mantras, but the Vedic mantras have more precise, description of the entire procedure. So if we follow that procedure, and if we put ahuti in the lelaimana, variety of the fire, when it is at its pinnacle, then that fire gets converted into sun rage, rasmay, suryasya rasmay. Rasmi is rage, and surya se is surya ki rage, sun ki rage. Nayanti means it travels all the way to the residence of that divine power and takes all your ahuti there. So this is the procedure which has been mentioned in this part of Mundaka Upanishad regarding Karma Kand. And this is not the only Karma Kand. This is the Karma Kand through Agnihotra. When you are worshipping the fire and transmitting the message to the divine power through the fire, then this is the procedure. But Karma Kand could be in a variety of forms. The people who are business entrepreneurs, they are also doing Karma Kand for development of a particular business activity. The people who are artists, they are also doing a Karma Kand to formulate image of a particular variety in the artistic form. Or the sculptors, they are also doing the Karma Kand. The businessman who is transporting goods from one place to another, distributing them to the consumers, he is also doing the Karma Kand. So this particular Karma Kand refers only to one variation, which is Agnihotra, where you are using the fire element for transmitting your ahuti to the divine power, designated divine power, because that ahuti is done in favor of a particular god or goddess. So this is how these five mantras of Mundaka Upanishad are talking about the Karma Kand. Now let's go to the mantra 6. Suvarts ahutay ehi ehi as sukratah पुण्य ब्रह्मलोक इति प्रियाम वाचम अभिवद्यन्ते अर्चन्ते यजमानम सूर्यस्य रश्मि भी वहन्ति. Now this is again further explanation of mantra 5, little more, that dedipyaman ahutiyan, the shining, because the ahuti turns into a sun ray, so it starts shining. It becomes like a ray. Or all these are coming from your good acts, because you are a proper Agnihotra. You are doing things in a prescribed manner. You are chanting the mantras which are supposed to be chanted. You are putting the ahuti in the fire at the right time. And you have also observed, the rituals required for Amavasya, Purnima, Chaturmas, and Atiti Satkar, etc. In that case, all these good actions you are performing, they will reach the Swarglok, the Brahmalok or the Swarglok. Now here there is a reference to Brahmalok. Now Brahmalok is not the Brahma ka lok, the creator's lok. Now Brahma ka lok and Swarglok are correlated in the Vedic sense, because Brahma and Indra, they have constant interaction in variety of ways. So some people call it Brahmalok, the lok of the Brahma, or some people call it Swarglok, the lok of the Indra. So whatever these good actions you are performing, these actions are transmitted. Again, the reference is again Suryasya Rasmi bhi, that sun rays transmit these uh, good actions to the Brahmalok so that those are reaching the divine power, the intended divine power, whoever is living there in that place. So, this is uh, the process of transmission from the earth where we are living, how we transmit our ahuti to a divine power whom we don't know exactly where he is living, who is not visible, he is not sensible. So, sun rays is the only way to transmit that ahuti to the intended divine power. And then you think about that divine power before you start your havan, you recite appropriate mantras, and then those mantras will direct your mind to that divine power, and the physical ahuti which you are putting, that will be transmitted through the sun rays, because those, you know, the fire will convert that ahuti into sun rays, and it will be taken through the sun rays to the divine power. It is exactly the same way as my sound and my image is being transmitted through those, so-called cables to different parts of the world. People sitting in Canada can see me, can hear me, eh, can see my movement because of that transmission. So this is the process of transmission which was used by the Vedic sayers for communicating with the divine powers. That is why there were references. There were many references in the past in which the divine powers were invoked, and they will come and present themselves in front of you when you perform these havans in a very meticulous way. The divine power will appear, and then you can ask what you want from the divine power, and then that blessing will be given to you, and then you continue. So this is the way you can also request the manifestation of divine power in the physical form. And this reference has been in many Puranas, in many scriptures. It may look strange to the so-called modern, writers and scientists, but it is based on the science, as I mentioned, giving three, four different examples. So these, this is the physical karmkand process which is performed by those people who are looking for something in this world. This was clarified in in mantra number 1 itself, that those who are looking for example, prestige, power, money, or health, or something else in this world, they are required to perform this kind of karma. One of the karma is Agnihotra karma, in which you invoke a particular divine power through the fire, and you put ahuti in the fire, which reaches the divinity, and the divinity can even appear in the physical form. Otherwise, the divinity can bless you. But you have to perform all these activities in a very systematic, mathematical way. It has to be in a proper mathematics. Like, like when we are doing this program on internet, there is a mathematics of the programming. The, for example, Zoom or uh, Google Meet, they have a procedure. There's a very profound mathematical programming which has gone into this process, and out of that mathematical programming, this application has come into operation, and then we have to follow this this application in a very systematic way to make it work effectively. Like Rajesh was telling today that we have to learn certain more tricks to make it work better. So these are the precise mathematical functioning which has to be learned. Similarly, in case of Vedic Karma Kand, if you want to invoke the God, the power of a divine, and then you have to follow these Karma Kand in a very precise mathematical way, reciting the right mantras, selecting the right, ahuti, and making what we call Vedi, the fire Vedi, in a proper way, and putting the ahuti at the right time, and then also observing other austerities which are mentioned in mantra number 4. So this is what this Karm Kand is all about. We will finish it today because this next part is quite interesting. So we will go into that part later on in our next session. So thank you very much. So only thing I want to emphasize that these things are not unscientific. They are not superstitious. There is a precise mathematics involved. There is a precise science involved. As the science is involved in transmitting electricity, or science is involved in transmitting images and documents and sound. Similarly, there's a science involved here in transmitting your message to the divine power. So this is what we should understand. And if we follow that mathematics, we will certainly attain the right results. Thank you.